Coming up on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, Edgar and I will get you all of the latest news and information from the state capitol and CDE with an in-depth analysis of how it impacts you. Plus, we are 1 week away from the state budget deadline. We'll talk with our experts in the field about what's happening inside the Capitol and what you need to know.
The ACSA Legislative Lunch Break starts now.
And it's a couple of minutes after 1 o'clock. We welcome you on a Wednesday to the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, along with ACSA's Executive Director, Edgar Zazwata. I'm Naj Ali Khan, ACSA Senior Director of Marketing and Communications. Welcome. We're honored to have you here on a Wednesday. Go ahead and jump into our chat and say hello. Let us know which region you're watching from today. Edgar, how are you?
I'm good, Naj. I saw you struggle there a little bit.
I know.
Thinking about how we're going to introduce our next guest, but I think that's part of the excitement. I know I'm excited. So I know we've had some good ACSA news here in the last couple of days. So I'm excited to chat with our old friend there, Iván, here in a second.
You know what? I admittedly, I was having trouble with that one about how we were going to be talking about our new colleague. And then,
I like pointing out when you're not perfect.
I know.
Your podcaster role, right?
Well,
like that's I'm always quick to point that out. Hey, one thing I forgot. For those, and Michael's really good about this, but you're back. You were not with us last week, and we were trying to go out of our way to not have any conspiracy theories. I know you were. I knew you tuned in just to make sure that like we weren't making any dramatic organizational changes, but. It was fun to have Michael on. He's a pro, as you know. But it's good to have Naj back. So and I know our audience feels the same way.
Admittedly, I turned on the show right at the top as I was sitting down to actually eat lunch at Disneyland with my family. And then heard afterwards that I was being blamed for technical issues. So that's fine. That's fine. You'll notice if we want to blame me for technical issues at this moment, the technology is working. If there's a problem, you and I have a list of people that we can blame for that because the statute of limitations has not expired. I want to say hello to Ellen Wheeler and Mary Stark, Lester Powell with us today. I thought I said, yeah, there you go. Mark Campbell. Deanna, our longtime viewer, Angela Show with us as well. We've got a lot coming up for you on the show. We're going to have an open discussion today about the budget, some of the hot topics as we hit this final week before the budget deadline. Edgar, I do want to hit one topic, of course, which was election night. We had primary elections yesterday, elections statewide. One that, of course, is of particular interest here for those of us in California public education, the state superintendent of public instruction race, Tony Thurmond, the incumbent, 45.7% of the vote, according to the Secretary of State's office just a couple of moments ago. There are 3 candidates right now with 11% of the vote. I know that you had an opportunity to just kind of survey what was happening on election night. Anything jump out at you?
Yeah, it was interesting because I think the big narrative come out of election night here in California, and there was some national attention on it, just given some of the, it's always early indicators of what may happen in November. California had a number of competitive congressional races, which are going to play a part in terms of who has control of Congress coming November. But I think the biggest takeaway coming out of California is that, generally speaking, turnout has been low. That in a lot of these races, it's been hard to get a lot of attention. We had a number of real spotlight races on the ballot, as you noted, not only the superintendent of public instruction, but the governor, lieutenant governor, the controller. So there was a lot of noteworthy races. I think we're coming off of a year where people were like, wait, we're having an election again? Didn't we just go through this?
Yeah.
Didn't we just go through the recall? So not a lot of surprises at the top. The governor, pretty much all the incumbents that were up came away with very comfortable victories in a primary again. None of this is final until November. And as you noted, somebody like Tony Thurmond where we remember what happened 4 years ago, where it was a really competitive landscape. He had some opponents, but I think it's fair to say, from a political perspective, that he's the very heavy favorite going into November. I think the results yesterday dictated that, and I think it's pretty safe to say that, like, unless the landscape dramatically changes, that he will be the next state superintendent for the following 4 years. One other place that we were keeping an eye on was county superintendent races. So county superintendent, this was a place where there was a number of incumbents that were, being challenged by folks who actually mounted a real legitimate campaign. That's not always the case in county superintendent races. That folks have to be elected, but there's token opposition. I would say there was a legitimate opposition. And I don't want to speak out of turn because I haven't analyzed every single race, and I even going into the morning of the day after elections, numbers change. So I don't want to say anything that, oh no, you're wrong, Edgar, it actually changed. But at first glance, most of those folks that we were keeping an eye on those races and those county superintendent races seem to have very comfortable leads to retain their position. So I know, given that there are members, given the interaction with our districts, that's another place that we were looking at, just kind of what those dynamics were.
Yeah, certainly a lot to monitor. Pardon me. Before we switch to budget, Edgar and I, we have not had the opportunity over the last couple of weeks to really tell you about what we've been up to. I've missed some time. Edgar was on the road, so we want to go ahead and show you some of what's been happening, because we'd like to make sure we share everything with our legislative lunch break family. As you may remember, we had my graduation, my master's graduation commencement over at Penn State. That is from the very beginning of the month. And then a couple of weeks ago, my daughter graduated from Pleasant Grove High School, Elk Grove Unified School District. She's the one in the hat in that photo. So proud of her. And she got to vote for the very first time yesterday, which was fantastic. And then last week, Edgar, you were in Paris, your old school district, visiting the administrators there, the classrooms, the teachers. I know you had an opportunity to spend some time in your sister's classroom. Give me the reflection. Going back, what was that experience like for you?
Well, first off, Naj, congratulations again on your graduation, and I'm glad we got an official photo. As you might remember, Michael kind of mocked one up a couple weeks ago, which we had a lot of fun with. But hey, I don't see a lot of difference.
No, not much.
So congratulations again to you and to your family. Like, what a great time in the Alakan household. Just you guys celebrating so many of these accomplishments. So hopefully you guys are taking a moment to really reflect on that and celebrate that. Yeah, my first couple days on the job last week were great. As I noted last week, as I was doing the show on location, if you will, down in Paris, was I really wanted to spend the first couple of days with our members, really try to get grounded on why we're doing this work. It's our members, it's the students that they serve. I thought it was symbolic for me to go back to my hometown and get to spend a few days there. So I had great hosts, Grant Bennett, the team there. I saw John Huber, Newview Union District the day before. I got to see, as you saw from the pictures, not only my sister's kindergarten class, and just those conversations with kindergartners are always fun. So I got to go to her class, and some of the other folks that you saw, some of the other teachers, my friends growing up, my neighbors from across the street who are now doing, fancy things. Malcolm Crona, who you saw there in one of the pictures, is a city councilman there in Paris, also a high school teacher. So I got to just drop in on folks that I grew up with who are, trying to impact the system in various capacities. So it was a fulfilling day. It was a great day. Started it out with my parents. It was a nice segue to really going forward and doing the work. The next day came back here to Sacramento and had some good conversations with our team, who I'm so fortunate, so humbled to have the opportunity to help lead. So it was a great, fulfilling few days, both on the road and then back here in Sacramento last week, Naj.
Okay, I got to ask you, because you did get to see your sister in her kindergarten classroom, and you were walking in, as the new executive director over at for our organization. I'm assuming because she was a family member, she was giving you a hard time no matter what your title is. I have to assume she's going to give you a hard time no matter what.
Oh yeah, well that comes with the territory, and there's only so much, like family's always there to keep you in check and keep you a little humble. The one thing I had to say, not just for my sister's class, but for a number of the classrooms I visited last week, there was a bit of guilt because they were in their last week of school.
Yeah.
At a number of these schools. And so, yes, Edgar's coming along doing school site visits, but what does that mean? I have the principal, I have the superintendent. So here I was walking around having these poor teachers on the last week of school with bringing along all their bosses. So, I felt like I was stressing people out a little bit there, but everybody was a good sport. And and I really enjoyed my time, both with Daisy, my sister, and all the other classrooms I got to visit.
All right. Well, let's do this. Let's switch topics because I know that our members are very interested to hear about this. Iván Carrillo is the incoming ACSA Senior Director of Policy and Governmental Relations. He has been a member of the ACSA family for a very long time, as over at Capital Advisors, but is mere days away from becoming the new Senior Director of Governmental Relations. Iván Carrillo. Iván, welcome back to the show. You've been with us several times, so we're so happy to have you with us. Let me ask you about your motivation to come back. I know we're going to talk about budget in just a second, but I just want to hear about your motivation to come back and be part of the ACSA family.
Hey, Nash. Hey, Edgar. Good to be with you both. Good to be with everyone. The motivation was for you all to let me back into the fantasy football league. No, but in with complete seriousness, it was first and foremost motivated by the people that make up ACSA, and for 5.5 years got to intimately know very quickly just how special of an organization is because it's made up of such special people, and then that starts with the membership, and these are people who are not only just big-hearted, loving people that are just joys to be around, but they're people that share in my values and of being very student-centered and always wanting to do right by students and being bold and being unapologetic and being deeply committed to fighting the good fight each and every day on behalf of our students and our families. And so that was certainly a top motivator. But the people that make up ACSA is also the team, the ACSA staff, and ACSA staff are incredible, second to none, incredibly talented, and sharing that same passion that I was just describing. And then secondly, as well, is it was an opportunity to do something really meaningful on behalf of kids, and I fully recognize that ACSA is uniquely positioned to be at the forefront at the state and national level of driving education policy and driving policies that best serve students and families. And so that was an opportunity that I just had to put my name in the hat and as an opportunity to return back and be part of that.
Hey, Iván. So first of all, I gotta take, this comes with some advantages. So I'm going to take a moment just to sing your praises, right? I mean, it was the first consequential decision I got to make as executive director. And I can think no better person. And for the members that know Iván, and I know Naj shares this sentiment, is just his unwavering commitment to our members, to the students that they serve. When we talk a big game about, we're going to have our focus on students, and Iván sitting there for 5 years in the same team meetings with him, really challenging sometimes. I was like, are we really doing that? As we're taking legislative positions, as we're thinking about priorities, is that where we're centering our focus? And so, as this opportunity has come about, I'm just really excited. I'm excited to have you back on the team. I'm excited for our members. I'm excited for what's to come. In that spirit, given that I've had to counteract that. You have your perspectives of what we've seen on the ACSA advocacy. Notwithstanding the person who came before you or whatnot, clean slate there.
That guy.
What do you see some as opportunities? What, in terms of vision about where we sit on this bigger education policy landscape? What do you think lies ahead for ACSA on the advocacy front?
First off, I appreciate just what you just stated, and I'd be remiss if I just didn't just state just how deeply honored I am to be given the opportunity, how grateful I am, and I recognize that the role comes with a great level of responsibility, and so. But yeah, no, I'm really excited, to say the least, thrilled to be coming back to ACSA. And Edgar, you and the team have done an incredible job of setting just a really strong foundation from which now I'm able to be part of building on top of. And so for me, I definitely think it's really about member engagement. I think ACSA members are the greatest resource that we have. And when I'm talking about ACSA being uniquely positioned, that's led by the fact that we have 18,000 leaders that have respected voices within their communities, that are unwavering in their commitment to doing right by students as part of our membership. And so everything is going to be centered around membership. And I think that's critical to really pushing forward policies that are needed and policies that best serve students. And so, and I know we talked a lot about grassroots advocacy, and I know that means different things to different people. So I reflected on this a lot, and I see this as being a part of broader membership engagement that's really critical. And so one piece of that is making sure our members are informed in a timely manner of everything they need to know about conversations and decisions that are taking place in Sacramento, so they can do their jobs most effectively. And so that's going to be a big focus, is making sure that information is communicated out in an expedited manner, in a way that's easy to access. Secondly, it's about membership informing our advocacy. And so ACSA has, again, an advocacy team that's second to none in terms of talent level and passion. But what's critical to the advocacy is making sure that our work is informed by the experts in the field, by you all, by the members. And so making sure that we have really strong lines of communication from not only Sacramento to the field, but the field up to Sacramento, so you all are informing our work, and that we're effectively and accurately representing you in all these conversations that are taking place in Sacramento is critical. And then third is the grassroots advocacy. It's doing what we can to provide you the tools and to be able to facilitate your direct advocacy locally in as easy and effective way as possible.
Folks, if you have, pardon me, budget questions for Iván, now we're going to hit budget. Go ahead and drop those into the chat. Angela, I just saw your question come in, so we'll hit that in just a second. All right, so Iván, we're a week away from the budget deadline. Let's talk about the landscape. What are you hearing right now related to the budget?
So, as you all know, the governor's released his May revision. The legislature has since released their legislative package. Where are we? June 8th. So we're about we're a week out from the deadline by which the legislature has to pass a budget. So that's quickly approaching, and we know that there are things that are still in play. By no means is this finalized. I think first off, just big picture, this is a really solid budget on many fronts, and it's solid because it's a reflection of the advocacy that has been taking place this year and in years prior. And so a big piece of that is really talking about the importance of investing in the LCFF and making sure that there is as high a number of discretionary dollars for you all to be able to make decisions locally about what's in the best interest of your communities. And so we're seeing really significant investments being proposed by both the governor and the legislature. The declining enrollment protections we've seen both the legislature and the governor propose should be celebrated and should be recognized as well. But certainly there are some distinct differences between both packages. And these have real serious implications And so a couple of these that are most notable and that are getting a lot of our attention here in terms of our advocacy is about the transportation proposal that's included in the legislature's package. But then secondly, the legislature's rejection of the current year COVID attendance relief that ACSA is very much led on, that the governor included in his May revision. So these are going to be two areas of focus for I know ACSA through the end of this budget process, but broadly speaking, it's an area that we're continuing to advocate on.
Iván, I'll dig in on that last note that you touched on. I know it is one of the big pieces. If I had to categorize the two biggest fights, I think it is on this front, on the transportation mandate, and I'll ask you to just say a little bit more on that piece and what we see as kind of some of the challenges, maybe what our members need to do on that front. I know ACSA is trying to put out some advocacy calls on that end, and then also you noted the attendance that we've been really trying to push the legislature to take into account that the attendance rates were not the same this year, given Omicron, given some of these fronts, and I know we're getting a little bit of pushback, at least from the legislature, on some of that. What do you see kind of next steps? I know you're familiar with, you're going to be right in the middle of this here in a couple of weeks again. You already have been on those two fronts in terms of the advocacy. And what can our members do on specifically the transportation and the attendance?
Yeah. So first off, let me make sure that we all recognize or understand what's being proposed. So the legislature in its proposal is looking to require all LEAs to offer a transportation to all TK through 6 students, and then all low-income students for the higher grades as well, beginning in 27, 28. And so there is some funding that's tied to this that's being put forth, but this is a program that has been woefully underfunded for many years, hasn't seen an augmentation in a decade. And the amount that's being proposed is nowhere near what it's going to require to support the implementation of this mandate. So it is an unfunded mandate that's being proposed. Not to mention there's just logistical challenges, and I don't need to spend a lot of time here, but we know that bus drivers are impossible to find. We know that buses, there's a real backlog in securing buses. This is also coming at a time where the state is really ramping up the shift to electric buses as well. And so in terms of where those technologies are, in terms of availability of people to be able to service them and the cost to be able to support electric buses. So what we're doing, what ACSA is doing and leading on is coordinating broad advocacy work to fund the home to school transportation program, to fully fund it. And we've seen some legislative interest in this. Assemblyman O'Donnell has introduced legislation on this, and to allow the field to be able to build up these programs in a thoughtful manner. And we believe and understand that if the program was fully funded, that the field could then do this and could then expand the number of students that are being provided transportation. So a lot of focus is in on that. Megan has done a phenomenal job in getting all the management organizations, the field ramped up on this. And I know this is a real area of emphasis and will continue to be. So this is, one we'll continue to watch and be in those meetings, beating that drum.
Yeah, Iván, I would just double down on that. One, kudos to Megan, because yes, Megan has really been instrumental on just helping coordinate some of the broader efforts. And an editorial comment, no surprise that, this is what we're talking about here, especially on the transportation front, is an example of this disconnect that sometimes we have, where policies may sound great, from the Sacramento on paper. And, when I heard about this, all I could think about is our folks, forget the resources for a second, but just from an operational standpoint, in terms of what is this actually going to mean? You noted, you hit it on the head, the people, the buses, the routes, right? And I think this is something we're always combating in terms of things sound great, but what is the perspective of how is this going to look if you actually execute it on the ground. I'm going to ask you one other question and maybe just summarize that we've gotten a number of questions on what's happening on Expanded Learning Opportunity Program. I'll throw you a big picture one. What's new on that front? Has there been any changes in terms of what was originally proposed, or where are we at on that issue?
Yeah, so with respect to ELOP, the legislature and the governor are all in on this program, and so they both support fully funding it. And fully funding it means upwards of about $5 billion in ongoing funding for the program. Where we see the difference is that the governor has proposed an equal amount of funding per unduplicated student, so $2,500, regardless of the number regardless of the unduplicated pupil percentage for a district. Whereas the legislature is looking to retain the current setup where you have a higher level of funding. In this case, it'd be $3,000 for LEAs that have higher concentrations of unduplicated students, and then a second tier of $1,500 per unduplicated student for those that are below that UPP threshold. So this is another area. I mean, just like the transportation, this is another area that's still up in the air, and your continued advocacy could certainly influence the outcome. So continue to please engage with your local representatives, ask them to engage with the leadership in both houses or in their respective house on your behalf to make sure that this are done and the way that serves your community best. Let me just circle back really quick, Edgar, and I recognize the time, but I'll be quick on this, on the current year COVID attendance relief proposal. So the legislature is rejecting what the governor included, and the governor included in his May revision what ACSA and CSBA developed in terms of utilizing pre-COVID attendance rates for current year funding. And this has out year implications, especially with that 3-year declining enrollment being in the budget. So by no means is this a done deal in terms of the legislature rejecting it. We know that it's one house in particular that's really strongly opposed, and that's the Assembly. We know from conversations as recent as yesterday afternoon that the governor is standing behind the proposal and with us, and is willing to fight on this in terms of retaining the attendance relief. So please, this is another area, and especially for communities that have seen the largest dips in attendance this year, because not every community was hit equally. This is another one of these critical pieces, and another one that's still open-ended. So please lobby your legislators on this as well.
Hey, Iván, I want to ask you a two-parter here. One is probably more summary, but the second is an advocacy question. The first one I have, hot topics right now. What are you hearing? School safety, other hot topics. What are you hearing related to that? And then Angela Shell, our longtime viewer, asked the question, how can ACSA support increased governmental advocacy within our membership? So a two-parter question for you, Iván. I'll have you answer.
Yeah, so let me answer the first question by focusing on school safety. I think as a parent, right, and as educators, and there's probably nothing that's more on top of our mind given recent events than how do we keep our kids safe, right, and keep our staff and communities safe. So we in light of Uvalde, we haven't seen any state conversations or legislation or proposals that's specific to schools yet, and part of that's a reflection of where we're at in terms of the legislative process. We did see an immediate press conference and attention being called to some sensible gun reform package that the governor and legislative leaders expressed support for. But this is a topic that's not going away. And the legislature is certain to be looking at this. But not only at the state level, we're going to be hearing conversations about this just moving forward at the federal level. And rightfully so. We should be engaged, and everybody should be having these conversations and thinking about these things. So ACSA has an opportunity to be a driver in this, and former presidents Holly Eads and Lisa Gonzalez deserve a lot of credit for leading on this topic in the past. And there's a lot of great resources that were developed, and there's a framework for policy advocacy as well that's been developed. But we're going to see some continued conversations and legislation be introduced. Certainly, we hear always when these things happen a call to have armed police or armed SROs on campus. So that'll be part of the conversation, and that's multi-layered, and we recognize the benefits and the downsides of that as well. We're going to hear a lot about social, emotional needs and mental health needs, and so all that to say, there's nothing here in this budget that's necessarily tied to that. I think the governor and the legislature would probably point to the one-time discretionary monies goes out as an opportunity of funding to maybe invest in this area. But certainly this is a topic that will continue to be around and be talked about, and we'll see legislation and budgetary conversations moving forward. And then, I'm sorry, Naj, in terms of the advocacy piece, I would just say stay engaged, keep in touch with ACSA staff and ACSA members. Make sure we're hearing from you, but to the extent you are having conversations locally, make sure your representatives know your position on these things. And that can be a really just short email to their office. It can be a quick phone call to their office, and work with ACSA staff to provide you any supports or information you need to help inform the advocacy.
Hey, I, as we get ready, Iván, to hit this final budget week, I just want to make mention of Stephen Hovey, who's over in our chat today. He wished you congratulations on your new position. And then he says, it helps that Iván still looks like a student.
we all should be so lucky, Naj. You know.
Yeah. Seriously, not one gray hair for Iván. That's
just wait till he gets into the new gig. Maybe that'll take care of himself.
Yeah, exactly.
I will note that I certainly don't look as young as I did in that headshot that's still being used. but I like being able to utilize that. We'll see how many more years I can get away with using that one.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, Iván, I'm on like year number 10 of using my headshot. It's just fine. Iván Carrillo, incoming ACSA Senior Director of Policy and Governmental Relations. Iván, great to have you here. We are so happy to have you coming back to the ACSA family. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Edgar, I do want to make reference. There was one question that came in here from Carolina Tercero. She asked, is there anything in the budget to address learning loss, extra days of instruction, after school tutoring? I want to make sure I set this up. First, we're still 1 week away from the budget being, finalized and going to the governor's desk. So changes could occur, but do you have anything related to that?
I mean, I would go back to some of the things that Iván noted on. Yeah, that there is. I mean, I think the legislature and the governor are thinking about kind of what happens after school. I think that's the crux and the nexus of their expanded learning opportunity program, which I know there's, some strong feelings, as I saw in the comments, about just implementation and whatnot. I mean, I think they're trying to address that. In terms of no extra days of instruction, not explicitly. I mean, there is this conversation still ongoing about extra dollars, discretionary dollars, and how those are going to go out and what bases are those going to go out in terms of per pupil or using some kind of equity index. So we were excited to see that this, as part of this budget, which hadn't been the case in the last iterations of the Newsom budgets, is that there is some discretionary dollars that the folks in the field, if that's how it plays out, will get some discretion about how they're going to use that.
Yeah. Folks, if you like what you've seen, go ahead and subscribe to us on Facebook and on YouTube. On Facebook, if you like us. On YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. We have more than 2,500 subscribers on our ACSA YouTube platform. Also, don't want to forget EdCal coming out this weekend. We've got ESS in there. And if you have anything to share with our administrators, with our members, go ahead and send that information, pictures, content, to our EdCal editor, Michelle Carl. You can reach out to her, mcarl@ACSA.org. Want to give you one more thing. Adney Mack, our Senior Director of Equity Services here, 15 years at ACSA, announced his departure from our great organization at the end of last week. He is moving on to a director role at Children Now. Adney has been a great colleague, a great friend here at ACSA for 15 years. Edgar, I know that this was an opportunity that Adney just couldn't say no to. But we're certainly going to miss him here.
Yeah, no, as we're celebrating, new arrivals or of old friends here with Iván. I mean, this is always bittersweet when somebody like Adney, I told him this, that, even before I came to ACSA, he's been such a fabric of this organization. From the advocacy, from the different roles that he took on. He led our political work. He led our federal work. Most recently, he really took some of those skills and really the knowledge of the members to lead our equity department. So he is one of those people that we all should express some gratitude for Adney, not only for the years, but really challenging some of the things or some of the focus. I mean, I think this focus on equity, going beyond the words about what is it that we're going to do in practice here at ACSA? What is it that we're going to provide our members? We wish Adney the best. It's always bittersweet when we see one of our staffers move on to new opportunities, but he's definitely made his imprint on this organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Well said. Thank you, folks, so much for joining us today here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. We are back next Wednesday on Budget Deadline Day. We'll have all of the updated information for you as it becomes available to us on Budget Day. Again, thank you so much for being with us today. Have a great rest of the day, great rest of the week. We'll see you next week right here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break.